Okay, it's January, New Year, 2025. And listen, something about me is that I do love a reset. I love a restart. I love to redo my whole entire life. Sometimes it doesn't happen exactly on January 1st, and that's the truth about me. But
It's never too late to start it, though.
it's
If you didn't start
never too
already, start it
late.
now.
It's
Never
Start
too
it
late.
now.
It's actually better to treat like every day like January
Like a
1st
reset.
anyway.
Yes,
Yeah.
see,
It's
Who
a
needs a
reset.
date?
Exactly. So if you're a little behind and you need a little encouragement for this year, me too, and same. And one of my favorite things that I'm doing this year are just two like simple things weekly. One of my big goals for this year was to reinvent how I do my scripture study and how I bring God into my life. I feel like I got very habitual about it. And I feel like last year I didn't like experience scripture study and prayer the way that I hope to this year. And one of the things that I'm most excited about are just these little sticky notes from Good News Brand. They follow, come follow me. But the reason I'm so excited is because I feel like it helps the scriptures come to life, not in a way that you read it and you're like, oh, that's good, but in a way that you read it and you say, wait, that's what I need for this week. That's the message that I need from God. And the other thing is just our tear pad. And it's just 52 different ways to look for him and ways to see him in your life and who he will show up as. And there's just something to me that's really important about goals and setting goals, especially in the new year, about being excited about it and getting things that make it fun and exciting. And those are two things I'm really excited about. So those are both available at Good News Brand. And welcome to This is Kingdom, a Good News Brand podcast. This is Grace.
This is Talon.
This is TJ.
And this is Hollis. And this week we are going over the talk His Hand Ready to Help Us by Elder Juan Pablo Villar.
Okay, guys. Anyone that has been around me the last month knows that I just read this book series that I cannot stop talking about. It's called Dragon Watch, and it is just as nerdy as it sounds. And I do love it with my whole heart. And I know there's at least one person listening that has read it. DM me. I want to be your homie. I want to break it down. I need to talk about it with somebody.
He talked about it. We talked about it for what, 2 hours?
And I got you sold that you want to read it because it is deep.
Is it about,
is it
about dragons?
It's about dragons and fairies and goblins and demons. I told you, it is just
so
as nerdy as it sounds. But I'm obsessed. And Dre knows that all I wanted to do during Christmas break was come home from whatever we were doing so I could just sit down and read my book. And I read them fast, y'all. This was a 5-book series. And man, I could do 28 episodes on these books. So here's number 1, and we'll have some more come later. Okay.
Everyone, no, we don't need to read it. We don't need to read it.
You don't need to read it because I'm going to break it down for the rest of the year. So, but here's what you need to know. One of the main characters, there's 2. Okay. One of them, his name is Seth. At the end of book 1, actually, it's at the end of book 2. Crap hits the fan for him. Things get really, really, really bad for him. And then all the way through book 3, things are really bad. And then all the way through book 4, things are really bad and they seem to be getting worse. And then book 5 comes and it just gets worse, like so bad to the point that you're like, I don't think it could get worse for this kid. And you're heartbroken because it's the main character. You love him. You want all the best things for him. And when you think it can't get worse, it does again and again and again. And he's in this spot that you're like, his life is as depressing as it could possibly be right now. Like, I genuinely don't think his life could be worse. And I was feeling the sadness. You know, when you're reading a book and you're like, I feel down because he is in such a dark hole right now. And then something happens. He's going on this journey and he gets to this place and it's called the source. And it's kind of like what it sounds like. It's the source of all light. And he gets to this place and he just experiences complete healing. And it was the craziest thing because I was reading this book and I just wanted to cry because Seth is my friend now. And he was in such a hole. And I was reading this and I was like, there is no hole too deep for healing. There is no darkness too heavy for light to come into. And I was reading this book and I'm like, we know who the source is. We know who it is. It's Jesus. And it just reminded me, and it's such a deep level that even if your life is bad for 3 whole books, which it was for him, it's not all lost. Things can turn around. Things can get better. And the more you just keep looking for the source, they will get better.
A couple of years ago, it was the weekend. I'm not usually much of an email checker during the week, and especially not on the weekend. That's the truth about me. But randomly, I checked my email, my work email, And I had a ton of emails that weekend and I was so confused. And I started looking at them and it was parents reaching out because a tragedy had just happened to one of the students at the school that I was teaching at. The more I read, the more tenderhearted I got, and I was weeping going through these emails. And the most recent one was from a mom, and she said, "Please, please, please, can you come over to our house on Sunday night? And we'll invite all the kids over from the school, as many as can fit into our house. And can you just come talk to them?" And I felt super unqualified and inadequate to go, but I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, I don't even need to say anything, but like, I just want to be there. Like, maybe there's a hug to be given or a word to be shared or a moment of just sitting there and weeping with someone that's experiencing the grief that they were experiencing. And I was like, yeah, I won't miss it. Like, I'll be there for sure. And I got in my car to drive. And right when I got in my car to drive to that house on Sunday night, I was weeping. And I said, they're going to expect me to say something because I was their seminary teacher and I think they wanted like a little message. And I said, I don't even know what I'm going to say. And I called one of my friends and I said, please help me. I don't even know where to begin with words to say in this situation with so many people who are grieving such a tragedy. I don't even know like how to begin this. And he said, listen, you just remind them that all humans should come with a label that says handle with care, fragile. And that's true about a human heart. And from here on out, to treat each other like that. And I hung up the phone and I was still feeling really nervous. And I walked into that house and there was hardly room to step into the house. It was full of kids just hoping so much for healing and hoping so much to feel a little bit of light in a weekend that was full of so much grief and sadness and tragedy and darkness. And I just remember the first few minutes being in there and it was silent except for weeping. And you could just hear sniffling and people wiping each other's tears. And you just looked and people were arm in arm hugging each other. And the second I started talking, I knew like it wasn't about what I was going to say. That wasn't going to fix the situation. But as I looked at them, I realized that that message is important, that human hearts are really, really fragile. And we don't really come with a warning that says fragile, handle with care, but we ought to. Because when we get a package like that from Amazon, we are so careful with it. And it is like a plate made out of glass, or it is like an iPhone. And we're like acting like it's like everything in the whole entire world to us. And we're like, no matter what, like we have to be so careful with it. And like you have to use two hands when you grab the package and you're going to put it on the table and you're going to be so careful when you open it. And then we just treat people like they're worth less than us than the package that got delivered by Amazon. When in reality, I think hearts are a lot more fragile and way more valuable. And if we could just treat each other with the care and the love and the support as if every single heart is as fragile as a little china plate, then I think we would maybe do things different and we'd say things different and we'd reach out more and we'd ask how people were doing and we really want them to mean it. And we would listen to people when they were telling us what was going on in their life and we'd pray for them and we'd care for them. And we sat there and we talked about that for a while. But the most remarkable part to me was what I watched happen after that. Because what I said that night did not fix the darkness and the tragedy. It couldn't have, that's impossible. It wasn't a one check, you're done moment. That whole week, people were coming into my office weeping and I was crying and everyone was sad and everyone was trying to figure it out. And the rest of that month and the rest of that school year, and even still now, 2 years later, people still are talking to me about it and we're still trying to figure out if God is reaching into that situation and how he's helping us. But something that I did see was how God used those kids to help each other and how they really did treat each other with such tender care, with such beautiful love, that anytime someone was sad, they were reaching out to kids that they had never talked to before. They were talking to people that they had never talked to before. They were sitting next to people, inviting people places. They were hugging each other more. They were asking each other how they were doing and they were really meaning it. And over and over and over, I watched God use those very kids to bring a little bit of light into a situation that seemed impossibly dark. And I think that it's far more often than we expect it to be that God will reach out to us by the hands of one of our friends. And I think that's a really beautiful lesson to learn. And that it might take 1 or 2 times, or maybe 5 or maybe 500 times of trying to reach us out of those dark places. But I think over and over, God will send angels time and time and time again with hands outstretched, just like his were.
So just hearing what you said, Talon, and hearing this experience from Grace, it reminds me of something that the brother shared in the talk. He says, occasionally we think that we only need to be there for someone in need, and many times there is more we can do. Having an eternal perspective can help us receive revelation to offer timely assistance to others in need. We can rely on the guidance and inspiration of the Holy Ghost to discern what kind of help is needed, whether it is temporal support like emotional comfort, food, or aid with daily tasks, or spiritual guidance to help others in their journey to prepare, make, and honor sacred covenants. And I love this. I just feel like a lot of times we're so stressed out. You know what I mean? We're so worried about, what we're wearing and if we're going to sound dumb when we're with our friends, and how people see us. And I just feel like if we could dedicate our life and our time to understanding that people are fragile, and we're fragile, and so we need to be going to the source too, right? But remembering that people are fragile, and showing up to those people and to those friends, not just to show up to be there, which is great to go and be present, but also showing up ready to seek divine guidance and direction on how we can bless that person, how we can lift them, how we can strengthen them, how we can listen to them. I feel like one of the places that God, at least in my life, that I've seen God just showing up time and time again is when you have someone reaching for the source, and when you have someone with arms outstretched, ready to take that person and ready to help and ready to serve. God is in that place.
I love that. And I feel like for me, one of the most fragile states that we can be in, or where we might find the most fragile people, are inside our own families and inside our own homes. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like when crap hits the fan, when things are going hard, family problems hit a little different than other problems. When it involves your family and the people you love the most, I feel like we're in such a vulnerable state. I feel like it's really easy to argue with your siblings. It's really easy to argue with your mom and dad, play the pointing game, play the blaming game, because those are the people closest to us. And I can't help but think of President Monson's quote when he talks about, don't let a problem to be solved become more important than a person to be loved. It's when we're most fragile, especially in our families, when it's so easy to argue, it's so easy to blame, it's so easy to point at people telling them they're wrong. That's when you need to turn to Christ. That's when Christ needs to fill those voids inside the home. Because that's where it hits personal for me, guys. I feel like problems at home are the ones that just, they nag at me. They're ones I think about the most, and they affect all the other areas of my life. When I realize that my parents, my siblings are sometimes the most fragile when we're with each other, that's when I can love the most. That's when I can show the most love. When everything's telling me to run away, avoid the problem, go somewhere else. That's where God can show up the most, because the home can be one of the most sacred places on this earth. And I don't think that's a coincidence. The family is where we need to recognize that we are fragile, and that's where God can exist the most because of the love that can be felt there.
I guess just to end the day, I want to end with this quote that I just love from this talk. And it says, he, talking about God, has the power to help us out of every miserable condition or adverse situation. And man, I know this message isn't for everyone right now, but I know there's people right now that are in a tough spot. And man, I don't think there's anything Christ would want to communicate more than saying, I can get you out of this. And light can come into your life, and healing can come in your life. And if you're in a spot that you're needing that, don't give up on him, because he's not going to give up on you, and he will show up.
And let's not forget the second half. Regardless of whether we feel close to him, he still can reach us where we are, as we are. His arms are outstretched, no matter where you are.
Sometimes life, it knocks you down, but don't you dare stay on the ground. Fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high. Fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high. is hard to bear. Give it to him, he's always there. No matter how far you think you've gone, he wants you back. No matter what you've done, fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high. Fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high. Oh please my friend, they're on the ground. You've come so far, don't give up now. I know you suffered for some time. Just take my hand, it'll be alright. Fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high. Fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high. Fall on your back, look to the sky. Remember he can lift you high.
See you next week.